Satan. Shooters go after Judas. Jesus Christ, if I live life on my knees, ain't no need to do this. Park it in front of looters, next to their church's chicken. All you pussies that losers, all my niggas is winning, screaming all my life. I want money and power, respect my mind or die for that shout. I pray my dick get big as the Eiffel Tower, so I can fuck the world for 72 hours.
Hello there, I'm Big Alias. I'm going to be talking with my face, and there's going to be stuff on the screen and stuff like that. That's what I've done over 200 times now, and here I go again talking about stuff. And I do want to say, actually, speaking of these videos, this will be the video that you're probably going to disagree with the most. I'm about to talk about reviewers, and this is a topic, you know, I talk about one of two things every time. I either do something dumb and stupid and I try to make people laugh, or I try to be informative and take my own personal opinions and experiences into a video and explain them to people with my voice that's connected to my face. And this definitely falls in the category of the latter. This is a subject that I will be talking about based on my experiences, and something that I think has become such a hugely prolific part of the internet of recent, especially with, you know, just everybody talking about reviews, and reviews becoming such a part of the forefront of what people think of things, and it's only getting bigger. And I think obviously when something reaches critical mass, it becomes very confused, and people start to base their opinions on a confused opinion. And I do want to use this video as a sort of source of information with regards to this subject. So that's what I'm going to be talking about in this video. But I will say that I know that my opinion differs from a lot of people's. I know that I don't really talk about this very much. I don't like to be very divisive. I know that I think the last time I did that was with that Battlefield 5 video, but I really don't like to form too strong an opinion on one side, because I try to be an entertainer and I try to be sort of, you know, a middle ground kind of guy. But I do know that I disagree with the way that a lot of people feel about a lot of the things that I'm about to talk about, not just with reviews, but with the content that is being reviewed. So bear in mind, if you do tend to fall in line with what the internet says about this subject, then I would probably click away from this video, because I'm about to be very opinionated in a way that differs to how a lot of people are opinionated on the internet. That being said, I think I should begin talking about the subject, because I've explained myself for far too long and I've covered my ass for too long. I watched a video like that and it was not good. So reviews. The reason I want to talk about this is because everywhere I go, in every post and every comment, I see this notion that the review is stupid. They don't know what they're talking about, because I had a great time. I love the movie. I love the game. I love the album. This review is dumb. This album was terrible. I thought it was awful. I listened to it. I thought it was a terrible album. Why are they saying it's good? And the same goes for, you know, films. And you see all these videos about how The Last Jedi is a cinematic failure, and all of, you know, and everywhere I go, even if Marvel posts something online, it's Black Panther is overrated, you know, and the very notion of overrated, I hate as a whole anyway, despite the fact that I'm sure I've used it before. I hate the term overrated because it basically assumes that I have a better knowledge of this film than everybody else, which it's just stupid. But anyway, to talk about reviews, I think the thing that people really don't understand about reviews is the difference between objectivity and subjectivity. And, you know, somebody who does reviews, and I write sort of critical analysis for a living, you need to understand the difference between objectivity and subjectivity. Objectivity is to take something and to extract all of the things that are good and bad about a product, about, you know, an entertainment product in the case of what I'm talking about. So say, for example, a film, you would look at things like cinematography, dialogue, performances, character development, things like that within the film. Subjectivity is to take your own opinion and say, I had a good time with this, I enjoyed this, I had a great time watching this, this was fun, or I had a bad time and I didn't find the dialogue to be very good, and things like that. And I think a lot of people take subjectivity into reviews, which is something that you should absolutely never do. A review is based entirely on objectivity. A review will take all of the things that are good or bad about a film and condense them into a review. Any reviewer worth their salt will do that, and will not ever allow their personal opinion to enter into the review. Any good reviewer would do that. If you see a review that says, I enjoyed the film or I didn't, that is a poor review. And so I think that's the core of what you need to understand with reviews, is it doesn't matter if it's fun. It doesn't matter if if you think it's an explosive, fun action film. If the core isn't there, then it's not going to receive a good review, which is why I think a lot of people are miffed about things like Infinity War. I enjoy Infinity War. I have it on Blu-ray. I had a great time watching it, and I watch it over sometimes. However, it is a deeply flawed film. Now, yes, it is fun. There's CGI, there's action, there's everything's going on, and I think it's the perfect way to end or to begin the end of this 10-year expansive universe, is to have this huge action-packed film, and that's great. However, to objectively approach this film, you do have to consider the notion that the pacing in Infinity War is phenomenally bad. It is just a few action scenes bracketed by occasional moments of dialogue and slight setup. You also have to consider the notion that all good reviewers will not enter into a film having considered other films, because they have to take a film as a standalone product. So if you enter into Infinity War not knowing anything about any of these characters, you're given no exhibitionism. So you don't know what's going on with these characters. There's a lot of motivation-based things and a lot of character development-based things that happen in that film that are not fleshed out in the film at all, because why would they be? That's why Infinity War is not a film that is supposed to be critically acclaimed, and it still made over $1 billion. And of course it did, because it's a great fun film, but objectively as a reviewer I wouldn't give it a particularly high review, because it is just a few action scenes bracketed with humour and the occasional bit of exhibitionism. No one knows who Thanos is really. I mean, it's explained slightly, but you're thrown straight into Thanos attacking, and spoiler alert, and killing Loki and attacking Thor and stuff like that, and having a fight with Hulk. You're thrown straight into that with no setup whatsoever, and that is flawed. Now, it's enjoyable, as I said, and I like it, and it's great, and it's flawed. You compare that to Black Panther, which received much higher critic acclaim. This is where I think people are going to hate me. I think Black Panther is a far better film than Infinity War. Despite the fact that maybe a lot of people enjoy Infinity War more, Black Panther has so much more merit to it. It tackles socio-political situations, which I will talk about later on. It tackles socio-political situations in such a beautifully graceful, undertoned way that really fits in the narrative so perfectly. It does explain things. It does throw you into the world of Wakanda very well. The motivations for the characters are phenomenal, and I want to compare it to Winter Soldier, which I really enjoyed too, and I think is up there with my favorite Marvel films. I loved Winter Soldier. However, Winter Soldier did try to tackle similar situations of the Dark Knight-esque, what is the repercussions of having these superheroes flying around everywhere. However, I thought that it was quite weak and didn't really play a strong enough role within the narrative. And therefore, I don't think it was as strong as Black Panther, which did manage to flesh out all of those political situations. Now, you may be wondering, why is that a reason to like a film? Other than the fact that I also think that the performances were great and the characters were great. Why would doing something like that make a good film? And that's where I want to get into the part that I think will be the most controversial within this video. And of course, I'm going to have to talk about Captain Marvel and things like that. Which is, a lot of people have this notion that a reviewer will review a film based on it, quote unquote, fitting the agenda of liberal tendencies and shit like that. Okay, so I need to get into this. Any reviewer worth their salt, will they review a film highly because it fits these agendas? No. Will they review a film highly because it has an all-black cast? No. Will they review a film highly because the lead actress has a feminist agenda? Of course they won't, because they didn't. We saw that with Captain Marvel. It received below average scores. However, a film critic will review a ton of films. It's their job. They review film after film after film after film. You can't think of a critic reviewing a film for the first time, and I think a lot of people do. I think a lot of people consider critics to be reviewing films for the first time. They have seen so many films. A film that does something differently, that takes that leap, is already going to put them in good footing if it's delivered well. So say for example, like, you have the Marvel universe, you've got, I don't even know how many films, but let's say 30 films, and none of them really tackle anything other than action, there's action, a little bit of repercussion of superheroes, a tiny little bit of politics, and then in comes this film, Black Panther, which just deals with these social political situations in ways that no other film in this series of 30 films has ever been able to do. That is immediately going to put you in a good position, especially when it's dealt with in a way that just fits the narrative and flows with the narrative in a way that makes it a truly well motivated, believable, impactful narrative, especially in this universe. And I know I said that you don't have to take, you can't take other films into the consideration of your review, but at the same time, you can consider the fact that this is a superhero film. It has action, and yes, the CGI isn't good, which, by the way, has nothing to do with a review. A CGI is never taken into consideration with a review. It's like reviewing a film poorly because they used a bad camera, because they didn't use the right 4K red. It doesn't matter. It's not at the core of the film, and again, it matters subjectively because it affects your enjoyment. It doesn't matter objectively with the core of the film. Anyway, if it does it well and it fits into that narrative so well and manages to be a great action film that goes to lots of different places, and the characters are great and they're funny in the right ways, and yes, they flip the cast. And why wouldn't you praise that? Why wouldn't you praise a film that's daring enough to say, no, we're not going to have an all-white cast. We're actually going to say, why do we always have a black sidekick or a black, comic relief? Why can't they be at the core of the cast? And to flip that and do, what Jordan Peele is doing with Us, and what Ryan Coogler did with this, to do that, there is something groundbreaking there, and especially when it's done with such grace and when the cast works so well as it does. Daniel Kaluuya and Michael B. Jordan and Chadwick Boseman work together so well in that little triangle. It's great. It really, there is something there that isn't there in other films. There's something there that isn't there in the superhero genre, and of course a reviewer will praise that. You can't ask of a reviewer not to praise something that is daring, even if we've seen amazing fight scenes, we've seen phenomenal fight scenes in things like Captain America's Winter Soldier, and the fight scene at the end of the Revenge of the Sith, which questionable, but we've seen great fight scenes, but we've never seen a superhero film that has injected politics in such a beautiful way. So yes, it is praised. However, you look at something like Captain Marvel, which I enjoyed, I thought was alright. It doesn't deal with social politics really at all, and I do actually think that it kind of stumbled on a few socially political issues, like why, when there's a female lead, do they have to talk about things like dress sense when that's never talked about with any male leads. Overall, it was just a fun action film, and that's what it was reviewed as. And I think a lot of people sort of get a bit hypocritical when it comes to things like, oh, it's just reviewed well because it has a black cast, and then when there's a film that has a black cast that isn't that great and it's reviewed poorly, nobody talks about that. I think that people are getting kind of up their own asses at this point. But yeah, that's you have to consider that. There's so much more to consider with regards to reviewers, especially as it's something that I want to get into. And I know a lot of people are going to hate me for saying things that the internet isn't saying, but I think, you have to think of reviews kind of as a game of Chinese whispers. So many people have so many things to say about certain films, games, and albums. And, in a game of Chinese whispers, you get 20 people around in a circle. By the time you hit the 20th, the person at number 20 is not saying what the person at number 1 is. And I think it's something that's kind of getting lost in translation, where people say certain things and then they just get escalated and spun into this giant web of nobody really knows what they're talking about anymore. And I think that's what happened with Battlefield 5, when people were so annoyed about the female lead, and then more annoyed and annoyed in different ways. And, and that's the path it's gone down. When ultimately I reviewed Battlefield 5 poorly because I thought that the gameplay wasn't great. I thought there was nowhere near enough content. The campaign wasn't very good, and it just lacked in almost every conceivable way. But yeah, that is how that's my suggestion for reading reviews. I feel as though maybe I've missed a couple of bits out, and if you do want to ask me any questions about how to approach reviews, if you're looking to do reviews, I've noticed there's a couple of people that I subscribe to with not such a large channel who've been doing reviews. I've been watching them. I love watching other people review content, especially when they don't just approach it from an angle of being annoyed about things like social political situations, and they review it for the content, I do watch that, and I think it's great, and I love watching it. And I think there's a lot of practice to all journalism, not just reviews, but there is a lot of practice involved with journalism. So feel free to hit the dislike button, because I'm sure people will. But I will see everyone later if you return to this channel for reviews in the future, where I talk about actual content. Isn't that crazy?
Living on cloud nine, and this night is never on vacation. Start up that Maserati and vroom vroom, I'm racing. Popping pills in the lobby, and I pray they don't find her naked. And I pray you niggas is aging. Shooters go after Judas.